Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
What's up, little skeletons? I'm Gina.
I'm Amber.
And this is Weird True Crime.
Going to waste zero time reminding you all that this weekend is the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival here in Austin, Texas. We will be there the whole weekend, so if you're in town and plan on attending, be sure to find our table and say hi to us.
You know who else will be at the festival? John Palmer. If you missed his emotional and powerful interview with us a couple of weeks ago, be sure to check that out and share the story to get justice for Katie Palmer.
You know what else I saw on the schedule that you sent over? There's going to be a discussion about the disappearance of Jason Landry there, too.
I saw that. I am so excited.
Which that is crazy that we've covered both of those cases now.
I know. I'm really hoping that maybe there will be some updates or other information that we'll be able to
relay.
share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm super pumped about that one too. I mean, I'm not pumped that it happened. I'm pumped to be able to actually see them in person and, get the story in person and maybe get some more information that we're not currently aware of, which is going to be awesome. And on another note, right before we jump into it, it is our 1-year podcast anniversary. Which is awesome and very exciting. I can't believe it's already been a year. And if it weren't for Amber and her ability to keep me on track, we probably wouldn't still be here. So thank you to Amber. We will be celebrating our 1-year anniversary at the podcast festival as well. So you don't want to miss celebrating with us. And now I'm done with my spiel and we can get back on track. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Have you ever wondered where the Amber Alert system came from? You know what I'm talking about. Every now and then, your phone will blare with this loud alert sound, and a message pops up about a missing child. Well, back in 1996, before cell phones were popular, it was established when Dallas-Fort Worth broadcasters teamed up with the local police agencies to develop an early warning system to help find missing and abducted children. AMBER stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. I did not know that before. As of January 2nd, 2023, 1,127 children have been successfully recovered through the Amber Alert system, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Today, however, we're going to talk about the 9-year-old little girl whose abduction and eventual murder prompted the creation of the very system we use today. Join us as we go over the tragic, unsolved murder of Amber Hagerman.
Amber Renee Hagerman was born on November 25th of 1986 to parents Richard Hagerman and Donna Whitson. Donna was 18 when she got pregnant with Amber, while Richard was considerably older than her. And 4 years later, they welcomed her little brother, Ricky, who Amber said was her baby. Donna described Amber as a very smart and fun-loving little girl who took after her grandfather, being silly and funny. Donna also painted a less than healthy relationship with their father, Richard. She said that he would go out with friends drinking and then come home, drink some more, and sometimes they would get into arguments, and the yelling and noise would prompt neighbors to call the police. The last time police were called, they came out and said that if they were called back to their house again, the kids were going to be removed from their care. This prompted Donna to leave Richard and get her children to safety. She alleged that Richard had turned physically abusive to her. Never to their children, though. But it was time for her to make a change so they could be in a better environment.
After Donna, Amber, and Ricky left, they ended up staying in her car for 2 days. She couldn't take them to her parents' house because Richard would for sure find them there. Eventually, they made their way to a women's shelter where they stayed there for about 6 weeks. During her stay, she was able to get assistance in getting an apartment and also getting on welfare. Donna was constantly worried about Richard finding them, but finally, after about a year, things began loosening up a little bit. Donna was attending school again and volunteering at the food stamps office. Richard had attempted to persuade Donna to move back in with him and be a family again, but she refused. She did, however, allow him into the kids' lives. At first, Amber was leery of Richard. She worried he would get drunk again, but as time went on, she warmed up to him more, and they were okay together.
Pam Curry, a WFAA documentary producer, was searching for the right subject for the documentary she was producing about how women get off of welfare, a very specific subject, so she needed a very specific person to be in it. Someone she knew got in touch with her and told her about Donna. Pam then got in touch with Donna to see if she wanted to participate. At first, Donna was hesitant, but she thought about it and realized that maybe she could help other moms by sharing her story. So, Pam and her crew began filming Donna, Amber, and Ricky in August of 1995, just before Amber's 9th birthday. They would be filming them for about 4 to 5 months, following them around, capturing their everyday lives, and releasing the documentary sometime in January of 1996.
On January 13th, 1996, Donna took Amber and Ricky to their grandparents' house in Arlington, Texas. When they got there, they immediately wanted to ride bikes around the neighborhood as it was something they did all the time. So around 3 p.m., Amber and Ricky got on their bikes with Donna giving them one last stay close warning before they rode off. They usually just rode up and down the road, staying relatively close to the house, but that day, they rode off a little further than they were allowed to go without adult supervision. Just down the street from Jimmy and Glenda Whitson's home was an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store. Amber and Ricky liked riding their bike up and down the ramp located in the parking lot that the employees would use to unload products from delivery trucks. Ricky started getting worried that they were so far away from their mom, so he told Amber they needed to head back. Amber sent him off saying that she would be right behind him, probably so she could just go down the ramp one last time. Ricky made it back to their grandparents' house and realized Amber wasn't there still. Their grandfather was outside in the garage when Ricky pedaled up, and he asked Ricky where Amber was, also noticing that she was missing. He immediately grabbed Ricky and got in his truck to drive down the street to find Amber. When they got to the Winn-Dixie parking lot, Amber was nowhere to be found. Only her bike laying on the parking lot abandoned was located.
At about 3:18 p.m., a 911 call was placed by 78-year-old Jimmy Kevill. Here's a clip of the 911 call, plus a portion of him retelling the incident to the news.
Arlington 911, what are you reporting?
Yeah, I saw a black pickup, and he grabbed a little girl and he took off toward town with her. And she hollered.
I had seen that little girl over there playing up and down there, and he run up behind her and grabbed her. He turned around and come right back to here where his truck was, where the door was open, and put her in the truck.
He was outside in his garden, which is located near the Winn-Dixie parking lot, and said he saw a black pickup truck pull up, a man in his 20s or 30s grab a little girl and take off towards the town with her. He said that she yelled really loud, and he didn't take the bike with them, so he figured he'd better call it in. Kevill described the suspect as a white or Hispanic male, less than 6 feet tall, medium build, and sufficient strength, enough to lift Amber off the bike and her feet never touched the ground. He headed out of the parking lot at a normal pace and headed left toward town. When the police arrived on the scene, Jimmy Whitson, Amber's grandfather, was there and explained that Ricky had returned home without Amber, and when he came to get her, all he found was her bike. Even though he was only about 5 years old at the time, Ricky says he remembers when he and his grandfather arrived back at the house and his mom came out of the door. His grandpa told her that her baby girl was gone, and Donna lost it. She called Richard crying, saying someone had kidnapped Amber.
Donna wanted to be out searching for Amber, but her parents told her that she needed to stay put in case Amber returned home. The police quickly came to the conclusion that searching the scene of the crime wasn't going to yield any results. The laundromat next door to the Winn-Dixie didn't have any windows that faced the parking lot Amber was taken from, and ultimately, Jimmy Kevill had the best vantage point from his yard, and he had already given them all of the information that he could. Some sources even say that there were people inside the laundromat, but they were possibly afraid of coming forward to the police for one reason or another. They immediately started looking for the black truck and even had officers pull over a few, but reminder, this is Texas. Trucks are everywhere. Another reminder, this was in the 90s. Social media and cameras weren't everywhere like they are now. Donna told Pam that Amber had been kidnapped, and despite having wrapped up filming for the documentary, she continued to document what was happening and to just be there in support of the family she had started to feel a part of.
Amber had last been seen around 3:00 p.m. She was abducted less than 20 minutes after that. Finally, around 4:30, the police contacted the news outlets, but back then, the fastest way to get information out to people was the 6:00 news. A child abduction murder study conducted by the Criminal Division of the Washington State Attorney General's Office and partly funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, in late 1993, that lasted about 3.5 years, found that 76% of the missing children homicide cases studied, the child was dead within 3 hours of the abduction. And in 88.5% of the cases, the child was dead within 24 hours. Time was crucial, and it was not on their side. The police set up a command post near the grandparents' home and began questioning Donna about who was around their family a lot. She told them about Pam and the documentary. With the discovery of this documentary, the police also thought they had it figured out. Someone must have seen the footage and targeted Amber. That was ruled out when they realized that the footage had never even been aired and it wasn't scheduled for release until the following week. They used footage of Amber to show what she looked like and to give people an idea of who she was, which was much more impactful than a grainy, still photograph that was usually the only thing they had to go on. Donna couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She really couldn't do much else other than watch the TV and beg for the man that abducted Amber to let her go and let her come back home. Donna also hadn't had contact with Richard for about 2 to 3 weeks before the incident, and they had only communicated over the phone. Pam also met Richard for the first time when he arrived at Donna's parents' house. He was leery of Pam and her crew, but they continued to film. He refuted any claims that Donna had made that he was physically abusive. He said he was never violent, but he did yell.
Here's a scary statistic. Less than 1% of child abduction cases are done by strangers. This means the majority of them are done by a family member or family friend. Police began interviewing the documentary crew, friends, and family. One by one, they were able to rule them all out, including the family friend Mike Thompson that people had voiced suspicion about early on. The one thing that stood out to everyone about Mike was that he drove a black pickup truck. They were able to rule him out pretty quickly as he drove a delivery truck for work, and it time-stamped every time he made a delivery. And at the time of the abduction, he was 30 minutes away. Unfortunately, that meant they were dealing with that 1%. It seemed like whoever took Amber wasn't someone she was comfortable with getting into the truck due to how he grabbed her.
By January 15th, 1996, they still hadn't identified any potential suspects. Missing posters were put up and news coverage continued. The entire community was heavily invested in finding Amber and had covered the city in pink bows. Police assumed, due to the fact that Amber was a 9-year-old female, there was potentially a sexual component to the abduction. This prompted them to start looking at sex offenders, especially the ones that had offended girls in the age range of 7 through 12. They even mapped it out on a grid to ensure they contacted everyone in the area. Helicopters and canine search units were also deployed in search efforts to locate Amber. Still, nothing is found, and I can only imagine how helpless the family must have felt.
2 days later, Wednesday evening, January 17th, 1996, a storm rolled through the town of Arlington and dropped the temperature considerably. Once the rain had cleared up, Stuart Coker took his dog out for a walk near the creek behind his apartment complex. To his horror, he discovered the body of a young female in the creek. Sergeant Mike Simons from the Arlington Police Homicide Unit was the first investigative person on the scene. He made his way down to the creek and found the body of a young white female floating face down and naked, caught in some brush in the water. The police department sent Darylyn Perryman, who is the victim assistance coordinator for the Arlington Police, to let Donna and the family know they potentially had found Amber's body. They couldn't positively say it was her until the scene had been completely processed. Even though Stuart and Edie Coker, the couple that had found her body, as well as most people on the scene, were sure it was her, especially due to the extensive media coverage her case had received. I can't even imagine how exhausting and how hard it would have been to sit there and watch the news coverage, waiting to hear if your missing daughter's body had been found. Finally, after several hours, they were able to identify some birthmarks on Amber's body. Mike Simons called Darylyn to let her know that she had 5 minutes to tell Donna and the family they had identified her as Amber before they released the information to the media. Darylyn, along with Arlington Police Chaplain Harold Elliott, delivered the news. Donna let out a gut-wrenching sob upon hearing that her baby's body had been discovered, and Richard was in denial.
Man. Stuart Coker had been ruled out as a suspect by the police early on due to him passing a polygraph test. The police suspected that whoever had abducted Amber was local. For one, the suspect was observed by Jimmy Kevill to drive at a normal pace out of the Winn-Dixie parking lot and make a left, which took them heading back into town, not to the right, which would have taken them away from the more densely populated area. Secondly, the police theorized that the suspect knew that the apartment complex had the creek right next to it. There was a video camera at the main entrance, but the night her body was found, the wind and storm shook the camera so much the visibility was reduced to next to nothing. On the footage, they did observe a dark truck pull into the complex, but they were unable to confirm it was in fact the suspect due to how unclear it was. The police questioned everyone in the complex, but sadly, there were no witnesses who saw anyone or anything that happened that night that could help them out. I think to me, the first thing that popped into my head reading about the black truck being seen, even though the camera, it was like hard to make out, to me, it seems like if they were a local, they probably knew the apartment complex was right next to that creek. So they just drove to the complex to drop her there, knowing that police would be like, oh, well, the suspect probably lives in this complex then, when he probably does not. And he just used it as like a good place to drop her off and confuse people. So that was like the first thing that popped into my head.
Just figured it was a good place to, I mean, a creek is, yeah. Well, okay. Anyway, we're going to get
Figured probably put her in there and maybe she'd get like swept away or something and never to be seen again. But that's usually not how it works.
No, thankfully.
Thankfully, yeah.
Okay, let's go back into the actual reason why we're here. To make matters worse, Donna was unable to see Amber until the following day when the medical examiner had checked her out completely. I absolutely cannot fathom what she had been going through. To have her daughter be missing for days, only for her to turn up dead, and then she's still unable to see her. I would have been an absolute basket case.
Same. I've been like, I don't care. I don't have to touch her. I would just like to be able to see her, because until you can see for yourself that it is your child, you're going to sit there and be like, there's absolutely no way that this is my child. So that's devastating.
When Amber was transported to the funeral home the following day, Donna was finally reunited with her. She got to finally kiss her and hold her hands and touch her face. She wasn't able to pick her up and hug her like she wanted to, though. According to Sergeant Mike Simons, Amber had a severe laceration to her throat from one side to the other, which he described as very violent. They were able to estimate her time of death somewhere around Tuesday night to early Wednesday morning, which would have meant that Amber had been alive for 2 days. But since Amber had been in the creek with the water rushing over her body, it washed away any real trace of evidence the police so desperately needed to solve the case. It wasn't until January of this year, 27 years later, that the police on the cold case revealed they did in fact have DNA evidence, but wouldn't elaborate as it was the only information that the suspect would know. While my curiosity wishes to know every single detail, I completely understand withholding information like this. Can only hope and pray that it will eventually yield some positive results.
I mean, at least that's some positive news, as they do have something that could hopefully lead them to figuring out who it was some point in the near future, especially with the technology that we have now. But
which we do talk about here in a little bit.
I know we do, but I wouldn't want to tell them that either, because, that's how you know that it's the real suspect, is they're going to know things other people don't. But
it's frustrating for everybody else.
It's like, what is it?
Why is there no information? Why can't you tell us anything? Well, they know things, but
they do it for a reason. Yeah. There were about 2,500 people that attended Amber's funeral at the First United Methodist Church 1 week after she had been abducted. The police had to block off the street in front of the church due to the crowd. Sergeant Mike Simons said that they were still actively looking for suspects and thought that the funeral would be a great opportunity to observe the crowd to find any possible new leads. But the sheer volume of attendees made it extremely difficult. And this is something that we've seen in a lot of cases. Just to speak to that, the police will go to the memorials or the candlelight vigils and stuff like that to look at the crowd and see if there's anybody who really stands out or seems suspicious. So it makes you wonder how long they've been doing that kind of thing. If this was in the mid-90s and we're hearing about them doing that kind of thing now. And we know they still do that kind of thing. So it's interesting to know that in that aspect,
it's been a thing for a while.
It's been a thing for a long time. Yeah. They were still relying on incoming tips from people. And as with a lot of other cases we've talked about, that meant that there were several false reports coming in as well. One such situation was a woman that came forward and said that she had witnessed the entire abduction. Naturally, the police were excited about this as it could be a total game changer. The woman said she saw Amber banging on the back window of the pickup truck and even provided the police with a partial license plate number. The police had shifted their investigation to solely focus on this lead, reaching out to the Ford Motor Company, who were able to provide the police with a list of potential trucks that had been sold, and it was narrowed down to a man that lived in Arlington, which seemed super promising. The man completely cooperated with the police, letting them search his house, but they didn't locate anything that could implicate the man in Amber's murder. They reached back out to the woman, who eventually confessed that she had made it all up and that she didn't actually know anything. She just wanted to help and thought that it was going to create a spark to keep the investigation going. This makes me so mad. This made me so mad. This is an issue we see now with people calling in false reports, and either they think they're helping, in some case they're trying to throw them off, but it takes away from what they're trying to accomplish. Even if you think you're don't just call and make up something.
I think at one point the woman said that she just thought it was something that Donna would want to hear. No, Donna wants the truth. She wants to know who is responsible.
You're giving this family and the investigators false hope and steering them in the wrong direction when they could be using that time and energy and resources finding the actual person that did it.
Yep.
So if you don't have anything actually helpful to say, just don't say anything.
Just don't do it.
I'm off my soapbox now. It made me so mad.
Donna and the rest of Amber's family, as well as the entire community, were growing frustrated with the lack of answers as to who was responsible for Amber's murder. People had said since the beginning that if they could have gotten the word out about Amber's abduction sooner, they may have been able to find her in time. If they had been able to spread her information, as well as what little information they had on the suspect, to more people in a wider area, more people would have been able to keep an eye out. Who knows? Maybe someone somewhere did see her or see something, but they just didn't know and didn't know to say something. Diana Simon from Fort Worth, Texas, proposed the Amber Plan. She had seen the montage footage of Amber after she went missing and said that the videos made her a real child to her instead of the still photograph, but by the time any of the public had heard of her case, 2.5 hours had already passed. She decided to call the news station and said that she didn't have any information as to Amber's whereabouts, but she did have an idea. Quote, "I would like to suggest an emergency system to be set up so that when a verified 911 call is placed, all the radio stations in the area would be notified immediately and they would interrupt programming to broadcast an emergency alert giving whatever information and descriptions that are pertinent." End quote. She wrote in a letter to the radio station. The Arlington Police Department and a group of radio station managers met and formulated a plan for an emergency broadcast alert to go out on radio stations, starting with a loud, obnoxious sound, and then an alert to let people know there had been a child abduction, followed by information like where the abduction took place, what does the suspect look like, what the suspect is driving, and so on.
In November of 1998, 3 years after Amber's murder, Patricia Sokolowski lived in Arlington, Texas throughout her entire pregnancy. She knew and loved everybody in the community. A woman by the name of Sandra Fallis was a friend and someone Patricia trusted, so she chose her to be the babysitter for her 2-month-old daughter, Ray Lee. One morning, she dropped Ray Lee off with Sandra so she could go to work, and Sandra was going to drop her off that evening. Unfortunately, Sandra didn't show up that evening when Patricia got off work, so she decided to call the police. The police showed up and took all the information in and decided to utilize the Amber Alert. The alert was aired over the radio and said that a 2-month-old baby by the name of Ray Lee Ann Bradbury had been kidnapped by her babysitter, Sandra Joyce Fallis. They gave a description of her as well as the vehicle she had been driving. 30 minutes later, they received a phone call from a man saying, quote, "That Amber Alert? The lady is right in front of me," end quote. The police were able to send a patrol officer out and was able to pull over Sandra and save baby Ray Lee, who became the first child recovered due to the Amber Alert system. Over the following weeks of the Amber Alert being activated in Arlington, other places across Texas, as well as the U.S., began reaching out to create their own system. In the year 2000, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children decided to take it nationally. In 2003, President George Bush designated a National Amber Alert Coordinator at the Department of Justice, and he signed the PROTECT Act of 2003. In 2005, Hawaii became the 50th state to complete its statewide Amber Alert plan, creating a network of plans nationwide. In 2009, the Amber Alert system expanded to the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, as well as Canada and Mexico, which meant there would be a cooperation between all three countries to recover abducted children. In 2013, Amber Alerts began to be distributed to cell phones via wireless emergency alerts from FEMA. In 2020, the 1,000th child was rescued as a direct result of an Amber Alert.
Even though her case has yet to be solved, Amber's legacy lives on through the Amber Alert system. Her brother Ricky said that any time he sees an Amber Alert go out, he thinks, "All right, sis, time to go to work." It has now been over 25 years, and Donna, now Donna Williams, is still hoping and fighting for justice and closure for Amber. As mentioned earlier briefly, as of 2021, information was released that the police department did have DNA evidence in the case, and recent new technology has been developed that the police department thought could be relevant to the DNA they kept. There just wasn't much trace evidence in her case to begin with, and since there was so little, it boiled down to weighing the option of whether or not they should risk using all the DNA evidence on a test that may not even work. They believe that the person that abducted and killed Amber is still alive, and they haven't given up trying to find him. Arlington detectives have been working with private DNA labs to determine if now is the right time to utilize the testing on the DNA evidence they have, or if they need to wait a little longer for more advances to be made. Overall, authorities have received over 7,000 tips throughout the years regarding Amber's case. APD Detective Grant Gilden says, quote, "I want to make clear here today, we believe this case will get solved. We believe there's no way the killer in this case could have committed the crime in the manner that they did without someone seeing, hearing, or having some knowledge of what happened." End quote. Donna remembers her daughter as the little girl that was always helping other children and taking care of them. She loved her little brother and always helped take care of him. So the Amber Alert is another way for her to continue doing what she always loved doing. At the end of the documentary, Amber, the girl behind the alert, Donna said, quote, "She was not just a victim. She was my daughter. She was somebody. She is still somebody to this day." End quote. Donna also still continues to plead directly to the killer, saying, quote, "I miss her every day, and she's just so full of life, and I want to know why. Why her? She was only a little girl." And to Amber's killer, I'm asking you today, please turn yourself in. Give Amber justice. Amber needs justice. Deeply, deeply needs justice. And to anyone who has seen or heard anything about Amber's case, please come forward. End quote. If you may have information that can be helpful in this case, contact the Arlington, Texas Police Department at 817-575-8823.
I so hope that they can solve this. And like I said, with all of the advances in technology, hopefully it can be done soon. I know it's hard when you have such a small amount of evidence to use, because once you've used it, it's gone and you can't do any more tests on it. So I completely understand their hesitancy to do it yet until they're absolutely sure that it's the right time, and that it will give them some sort of result. But then saying that they believe or know that the killer is still alive makes me hopeful that they do know something else that they're not telling people. Maybe they do have a suspect in mind. Maybe there is a lead, or they do have a good idea of who did it, and they just need the DNA evidence to verify
Back it up.
that that's who it was. Because otherwise, why would they be so sure that the person is still alive? That's just kind of where my mind goes. But it's so interesting to hear the story of the girl behind the system, and the fact that it was just an individual in the community that came forward and was like, we need a better way of informing people when something like this happens, and a faster way of informing people. And the fact that that was listened to and implemented so quickly is awesome, because as sad as it is, you don't see that very often. That doesn't happen very often. It can take years for things to change or be implemented. So, the fact that it was taken so seriously, and they understood the importance of getting the word out there so much more quickly is awesome.
Her legacy really does live on because of it. This case hit a little close to home for me for a few reasons. One, Amber was born the same year I was. We were just 7 months apart. Two, obviously the same name. And three, Arlington is only about 3.5 hours away from Austin. It really just makes you realize that no matter how safe you may feel in your personal bubble, wherever you are, heinous things like this can happen to absolutely anyone. And she was one of that 1%.
Yeah, it makes you want to hold your kids a little tighter. That's for sure.
My child when she gets home from school and she allows me to hug her, I guarantee you I will. She's in her, they call it the cat years for elementary students, because for middle school students, elementary kids are like puppies. They're affectionate and they want your attention, blah, 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 blah. They're all yay, happy, happy. And then when they hit middle school, and it's so accurate, it's scary. When kids hit middle school, they turn into cats. They're just aloof, and they just want you to feed them and leave them alone. And every now and then they'll come up to you on their time and terms. And it's so accurate. But
I've never heard that term before. That's so funny.
Anyway, if you don't want the IQ of a mayonnaise jar, be sure to join us next week for the lighter side of true crime. Comedy really is cheaper than therapy.
Until next time, stay safe.
And make good choices.
Bye.
Bye-bye.